Okay. So it is the 19th of December, 2024, and I'm here chatting with David Beard. Hi, David. Thanks for joining me
Hi,
today.
Tim.
So David is a exercise physiologist of many years experience. And David, when did you study exercise physiology?
Well, actually, Tim, when I first started my undergrad degree, like exercise physiology didn't really exist as a profession. So I went to uni thinking I'd be a phys ed teacher, and then got much more interested in the health side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up doing an honours degree, and then was lucky enough to get a couple of scholarships, and ended up doing a master's degree in exercise physiology in the United States.
Right,
So that
cool.
was kind of when I really, yeah, honed in on that health side of it.
Yeah. So you would have started doing like a phys ed teaching degree, and then
Yes.
when you finished your masters, were you saying, "I'm David Beard, I'm an exercise physiologist," or or
Um,
did you have to kind of invent a title for yourself?
Well, yeah, that name kind of didn't really. I mean, I'd studied exercise physiology. I can't remember actually if I called myself an exercise physiologist back then. I
Mm,
guess I did, but it wasn't really until the mid 90s, I guess, when the term exercise physiology became more mainstream.
hmm. Yeah,
And then it really wasn't until, 2005 when exercise physiology joined the Medicare program that it
yep,
really sort of got known as an allied health profession.
mm,
But I was
yeah,
around, decade or so or more before that.
yeah. It was very
Yeah.
interesting to see all those changes. And
Yeah.
you am I right that you got a Fulbright scholarship? So
I did get it.
tell me about that. That's kind of that's another way to say you're really smart.
I don't know. Listen, I'd done my honors degree. I'd always wanted to go to the United States, so I applied for scholarships at a couple of different universities in the US, as well
Mhm.
as the Fulbright scholarship. I got what's called a teaching assistantship to the University of Arizona. So I actually taught some undergrad classes
Oh,
while I was
cool.
doing my masters. And then I was lucky enough, I think there were 12 postgraduate Fulbright scholarships the year I got one. I think I was the last one to get one. But anyway,
What is a Fulbright scholarship? It's an arrangement between Australia and America? Is that the thing?
yes, and it was set up by Senator Fulbright
Hmm.
back in the, oh gosh, I think 50s and 60s,
Hmm.
in to foster international education relationships between US and different countries.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as Australia being one of those. So they have different classifications. I got the postgraduate one, which
Yeah.
which covered all my travel expenses and insurance and things, and
Yeah.
the scholarship from the University of Arizona covered my tuition fees.
Oh,
So
nice.
I was very lucky that made it much more economically viable for me to do.
Yeah. And what was your thesis on?
Well, I,
Or
I actually did a
thesis?
coursework master. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'd done an honours degree here
Mm.
on growth and development.
Hmm.
Um, I there were so many courses that I wanted to do as part of the
Mm.
master's program. I figured I would get more value doing coursework masters than spending all my time doing another research project.
Yep.
And if I wanted to go on and do more study as a PhD, which I,
Yep.
in some ways, am disappointed I didn't, but
Hmm.
anyway, I didn't need to do another research project to get
Okay.
into a PhD program.
Cool.
So, and I did courses in stress management and biochemistry of exercise and nutrition and counseling and cardiovascular disease, a whole heap of stuff that was
Yeah.
really relevant to the health stuff I wanted to
Yeah, cool. And what was that? What did you want to do? What was motivating you
do.
to go and do all that study and
Um, I mean, I guess I always had this, and through the program, this belief that exercise was really important from a
hmm.
health perspective,
Hmm.
and so the master's degree sort of helped expand that. Like I said,
Yep.
by body composition and heart disease and stress management and a lot of things. So I was sort of interested in that corporate health area, but just general population health.
Yep.
And how do we educate people about looking after their own health better so they're
Yep.
not dependent on the health system fixing it up at the wrong end, at the
Mm.
point again when the wheels are falling off.
Yeah. If you could cast your mind back to when you were studying in America and kind of having these epiphanies, if hopefully that's not too strong a representation of what you were thinking. But
Something like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it just strikes me that to say exercise is really good for your health seems so obvious today.
Yeah.
And maybe you and I are biased because, we've probably always gravitated to being into sport and training. But in the kind of popular and cultural mind at the time, was that something that was not taken for granted? Was it was did do you think it was always that was a kind of there was inherited wisdom about that maybe, but not it hadn't necessarily taken root in the world of science.
Um, I think what changed, being fit and healthy, and I was in the US in the mid '80s, so the kind of the fun run boom was
Mm. Yep.
happening and the aerobics boom was happening. So it was kind of like young, healthy people being fit and exercising was a good thing.
Yep.
And that was becoming accepted. What wasn't accepted and what wasn't yet mainstream was the
Mm.
importance of exercise as we get older.
Yep.
And one of the deviations in my career, well, it wasn't a deviation. So after a few years working for HBF, one of the big
Mm.
health insurance companies, helping them set up some of their corporate health programs,
Hmm.
I got the chance to work in aged care.
Mm.
And that's where the rubber hits the road from an
Hmm.
exercise point of view and health.
Yep.
If you can get, and I was working with people in their 80s, 90s, some over
Mm.
100, you can
Wow.
get them exercising more. And, it's
Mm.
a real challenge in that population because they've never exercised in their
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
That's when I really realized the benefit of it from an
Mm.
aging perspective.
Yep.
And even and that's progressed even more now. I used to go home to my wife and say, if we can only prove that exercise helps with dementia and Alzheimer's, everyone will do it. Well,
Mm.
we now know it's one of the major things that helps prevent and
Yep.
even manage
Yep.
Alzheimer's and dementia. Um, and I think where exercise physiology is really taken off, it's not just about preventing health issues, it's about
Mm.
managing health issues.
Yep.
So whether it's or people needing hip or knee replacements, manage getting as strong as you can, whether it's diabetes, just about every condition on the planet,
Yeah.
exercise is going to help.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
you kind of we've chatted about my journey kind of into physio and then out, and I think like I was always into my own training, and in between studying physio and then working as a physio and then leaving that profession doing entirely different stuff, I relied on it to keep me from climbing the walls and being a nervous wreck. Yeah, and
yeah,
so and that was yeah, it's I forgot where I was going with that, but yeah, it's
well, and I think you're right. I mean, I think one of the biggest misutilized, not misused, underutilizations of
mm,
exercise is your mental health.
mm,
I mean, we've
yeah,
now got exercise physiologists working in the public health system in the mental health units because we
mm,
know, and research came out earlier this year showing that exercise for is 1.5 times more effective for treating depression and anxiety, not really serious mental health
hmm,
issues, but for the majority of people who suffer some anxiety and depression,
yeah,
exercise is more effective than the medications on
yeah,
paper. I'm not saying people shouldn't take medications,
yeah.
but on paper, it's more effective. So,
Yes, so you just need to patent the exercise pill. Then you
yeah,
can
listen,
ride into
the
the
drug
sunset.
drug companies are spending millions to try and come up with a
Yeah.
pill that will mimic all the effects of exercise. I don't think
Mm,
they're ever going to do it.
yes, yeah.
Because it impacts so many different of our
Mm.
physiological systems that
Would you take it if they could do it? I don't think I
would
would.
be interesting, wouldn't it?
I don't think I would. Yeah.
I don't think I would because I just
Mm.
don't think I don't think that you'll ever come up.
Mm.
Just exercise impacts so many things. They're never
Yeah.
going to come up with a pill
Yes.
that affects, blood pressure, brain chemistry, your gut
Hmm.
microbiome, your muscles, your blood. It's
Yep.
la la land, I reckon.
Maybe it'll be a pill to have you kind of switch personalities, and you'll kind of have you develop dual personality disorder, and so the fit version of you will take over for a half a day, and then you can wake up in
Yeah,
back into your body, and that person will have done some training.
maybe if they worked on a pill that made people want to exercise,
Yeah, yeah.
then that would be worth its weight in gold, wouldn't
That
it?
one's called methamphetamine, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
So yeah, so I wanted to chat to you today about your reflections on your career. Um, in regards to helping people to lose weight. So, yeah. So, how old are you now?
I'll be 64 in a couple of weeks.
64. Cool. Happy birthday for
Yeah,
then.
thank
And
you.
so how long would you say you've been, if you could tally up all the years in your career when that's been a thing for you, where you've been, on the coalface clinically helping people to try to have a healthy body composition, what would you say, like rough estimate?
Um, More focused probably in the last
Mm.
15 years. But, to be honest, Tim, I don't tell people I'm helping them to lose weight.
Yep.
I say my job is to help you get as metabolically healthy as possible.
Yep.
And theoretically, if you're carrying extra weight, you should be able to lose that.
Yes.
Now, so I don't, even though people come to me to
Mm.
lose weight,
Yep.
that's not my focus. My
Yep.
focus in my head is I'm trying to help you get as healthy as possible.
Yes.
And that often coincides with losing weight and being in good body composition, etc.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, so this is just
Yes.
it's
It's a
the way
subtle
I approach
distinction.
it.
Yeah, it's an important distinction though, right? Because you can carry excess fat, and it kind of depends on where you carry it. But even
Yeah,
if you have a lot of central obesity, if you're really fit, you will do a lot to mitigate against that,
yeah, you've got a lot
against
of
the negative consequences.
protection.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got a lot of protection
Mm.
against the downside of carrying
Yeah.
extra weight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Well, if we kind of, with those provisos that you're not explicitly necessarily trying to help people lose fat. You're trying to help them get healthy, and that fat
yeah,
loss may happen, may not happen,
yep,
but it may happen.
yep,
If you just thought, okay, well, what have you observed about what has worked for people for weight loss? What's worked? What hasn't worked? And what do you think you observe about people who've successfully lost a lot of weight and kept it off?
yeah.
And that could be in
Um,
terms of their diet, exercise, their attitude, their mental health, or any other kind of important factors you can observe about people.
yeah.
And
Um,
if you forget the question at each stage, I can
yeah,
restate
yeah.
it.
I think one of the interesting things is what I tell people now around diet and exercise, and I did a nutrition unit as part of my
Mm,
master's. So I cross over that boundary,
yep.
even though I'm qualified as an exercise, I cross over the nutrition and exercise space.
Mm,
Um, I mean, food is critical to our health. There's no
yep.
doubt about it. And if we wanted, if what's the number one biggest lever people can pull to improve their metabolic health and potentially lose weight, food's the number one. There's no
Hmm.
doubt about that. And what I tell people, what the advice that I give most people now is probably the exact opposite of what I learned back at uni
Right. Okay.
40 odd years ago. So, our understanding about
Mm,
all of that has evolved over
mm,
time. And it's a real challenge because
mm,
trying to change what is generally just considered gospel
yep.
is a challenge.
Can I guess what you were told to tell people
Oh yeah,
back
yeah,
then? So it was, yeah,
back in the
eat
heart
eat
disease
eat
days,
carbs regularly. Eat carbs
eat,
regularly.
eat eat lots of carbohydrates, minimal fat.
Yeah.
Avoid fat like the plague,
Yeah.
and eat carbs.
Yeah.
And
Frequently as well. That was the thing, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
eat 3 meals a day. Make sure you have a snack in between morning tea
Hmm.
and lunch and
Mm,
dinner, so you never get hungry.
yeah.
That was the advice, and that has been the advice,
Mm,
and still in some ways is the mainstream advice
yeah.
today
Yeah.
for people.
Yeah, that zeitgeist is kind of turning around, but it's yeah, I
It's a
guess
slow
it's,
process turning it
yeah,
around
yeah, for sure.
because it's
And
so ingrained.
yeah, yeah. And so you think, if you look back at just even the last 10 to 15 years, if you think of the clients you've helped to lose a lot of weight,
Yes.
what do you think has worked, and what hasn't worked, or what do people try to persist in that keeps them from having results in this area?
Um, what I've learned over the time, and I'm lucky to have some technology to measure people's
Mm,
metabolism is people who are kind of dependent on glucose for their energy, and the body can
mm,
use both fat and glucose. People who
yep.
are glucose dependent tend to crave carbohydrates, and that makes
Mm,
perfect sense. If that's what
yep.
the body's using, that's what we can. Um, so to try and get them to change when their physiology is saying, "Give me more of that, give me
Mm,
more of that," is a challenge. The ones who have
Yeah.
really succeeded are the ones who have stuck at it long enough to
Mm.
switch their metabolism around.
Right.
They go from being basically sugar burners to fat burners.
Yeah.
Then a whole lot of things tend to improve in those people. Their hunger
Mm.
goes down, their energy levels remain more stable, their blood sugar levels drop,
Yep.
their insulin levels drop if they've got high insulin, and a lot of them have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then they're not fighting their physiology.
Yeah.
So if you're dependent on glucose for energy all the time,
Mm.
you're constantly hungry
Yeah.
because that's what body's chasing because we can't store much.
Yeah.
So we'll eat what we need. We'll store any excess. We'll use what we need from
Yeah.
our meal. We'll
Yeah.
store the excess as fat, and then we'll get hungry again because we can't access the fat.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
worth dwelling on this, I think. So I think what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, that what you have observed working,
Yep.
and with all the provisos about, that's just you and, there's bias that can creep in and everything.
Absolutely.
But you feel you've observed that when people invest the time and focus on changing their metabolism,
Yep.
that brings results, correct?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
because they have
So I'll just
again. And I use
interject again. Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, I think it's worth kind of it's dwelling um on this approach because I think if we could really slow it down because I think this can be a real, like as we've discussed offline, I think this is it's a big paradigm shift, and I think the power of the idea is really powerful, and
Yes.
when people, because the thing that makes it really hard to lose weight is hunger.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, what is it about? What is it? Talk us through what's kind of what's going wrong in someone that, in terms of the metabolism of someone who who is carrying a lot of weight. That in the scenario you're describing. So yeah, if we
Yeah.
can slow it down and go into detail.
Yeah, typically what I see, again, from having the benefit of being able to measure
Yeah.
somebody's metabolism,
Mm,
is I would say the majority of the people I see, not all of them, but the majority of
mm.
them are not good at burning fat.
Yeah. And how
So,
does what is the technology and how does it pick that
so
up?
I use a device. The science is called indirect calorimetry. So
Mm,
effectively, we're measuring the oxygen and carbon dioxide that somebody is
mhm.
exhaling.
Right.
That tells us kind of what's going on in the cells.
Mm,
And there's a company in WA that's developed not the science, but they've developed a
mm.
little device that is suitable for a clinic.
Yep.
That technology was around when I was a student 40 odd
Yep.
years ago, but it was a great big device that, took up half a room and you had
Mm,
to collect gases in a bag and measure it and stuff. Now,
yep.
this company, Metabolic Health Solutions, have put that into a format and the accompanying
Mm,
software that allows practitioners like me and dietitians and
yeah.
other health professionals to use it.
Yeah.
So effectively, we're measuring what someone's breathing back out,
Hmm.
and we can get a few measures from that. We can get a measure of their resting metabolism,
Hmm.
what their metabolic rate is. Most people who are overweight think I must have a slow metabolism.
Mm,
And it's very, very rare have I seen
hmm.
someone with a slow metabolism. Usually the
Right.
bigger you are, the higher your metabolism.
Mm,
So it's not about rate so much, but it's
mm,
about efficiency, how well their system works,
hmm.
which is another measure we can get, and then whether their body is burning glucose or fat for
Yeah.
energy. And predominantly the people who struggle with weight are not good at burning fat.
Wow. And so this is not for the people listening to this. This is not some sort of gimmick. It's not snake oil. This is basically a methodology that was well established in research settings, has
Yes,
been
absolutely.
made portable enough to bring into the clinic,
Bring
and
in
the
it. Yeah,
cost has come down low enough. Yeah.
yeah.
And so yeah, that's yeah, and then the person, yeah, talk us through the person you can identify, based on gas analysis, that
Yes,
burns sugar at rest.
yes.
Why is it that they are so hungry?
Well, partly because we can't store much sugar in our body.
Mm,
So we
yeah.
can store glycogen with sugar, glucose as
Yep.
glycogen in the muscles and in the liver, and a little tiny bit in the blood.
Mm,
Um, but if we're dependent on that for energy, we'll use up what we
yeah.
what we need. Our blood sugar levels will drop,
Mm.
because we'll burn up the glucose in our blood,
Yep.
and that signals to the body, I need more food. So
Yep.
we want to eat more.
Yep.
If we're not dependent on that glucose for energy, and can access our fat stores, we don't deplete our
Mm.
glucose stores in the body and glycogen stores. So the brain doesn't get the signal, I need more food.
Yeah. Because you've
Um,
got, we've all, even in a very lean person, the leanest marathon runner still has plenty of energy left in their fat.
Oh, absolutely. I tell, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty lean.
Yeah.
But I tell my clients, I say, listen, I've got enough fat on me to
Mm.
last me 3 months.
Mm.
I'm not going to, if I stopped eating today,
Mm.
my body will access fat stores and I'll still
Yeah.
be here for 3 months. So the thought that you have to eat every
Mm.
few hours or you have to eat before you
Mm.
exercise because you need the energy
Yeah.
is just crazy.
Yeah.
Physiologically it doesn't make any sense. We would
Yeah.
have died out as a race
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of years ago if we couldn't get food every a
Yeah.
few hours because we didn't.
Yeah. And you may kind of have to eat, quote unquote, because you're just ravenous. And that herein lies the problem, right?
Yes, it's the hunger.
Yeah.
Controlling hunger is the number one goal. And the way to do that most effectively is get good at burning fat because it's not like
Yeah.
you're starving yourself. You're just eating food that you've already stored
Yeah.
from yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. I really think it's a powerful idea that, um, that in order to, and look, I'm not an expert in this area, and I've kind of, as you know, I've kind of stumbled across this idea pretty recently. But I think, yeah, it is a powerful thought to take for a person who's struggling with excess weight to take to heart that the things they can do to change their kind of their engine and the engine's fuel preferences through
Yep.
diet and exercise can be really really powerful. Yeah, and
Yeah.
like changing you've referred to the switch, which is basically your body's tendency to whether it can switch over to fat or at least kind of run on both in a
Yeah, run
hybrid
on
mode.
both. And
Yeah,
that's exactly what we want the body to
yeah,
be able to do. I mean,
yeah,
the term that is used is metabolic flexibility.
mm,
You can burn fat when you don't need lots of
mm,
energy quickly. But then when you're exercising at a high intensity or you've eaten carbohydrates or sugary things, your body can use that up, but then it
yeah,
can switch back to
yeah,
burning fat. And that's the key. It's not that
mm,
you ever burn glucose. We all
yeah,
burn glucose, but
yeah,
having that flexibility.
yeah. And then a person who's carrying excess body fat, and who is trying to lose some of that, they can think to themselves, um, when I go when I go to the gym, it's not that I need to chip away at burning off this excess fat. It's that I need to put in some time to change my engine.
Yes.
Yeah, and same with the diet. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really key, important distinction. Is
Mm.
I think one of the mistakes you've made over the years as a profession, and the whole weight loss industry has talked about exercise as a way just to burn more calories,
Mm.
burn more
Yeah.
energy, and I think that's a false dilemma because we
Mm.
don't burn. When we're exercising, especially if we're exercising at a moderate intensity,
Mm.
the extra energy that we burn compared to at rest is not
Mm.
huge.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to do a truckload of exercise to think
Yeah.
about burning off. But if you think about your exercise as I'm trying to get fitter so my metabolic health is
Yeah.
better, so my engine's working better,
Mm.
people feel better about that than just thinking I've
Yeah.
got to exercise for 2 hours to burn off a can of Coke.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, and I think I told you the anecdote, and I'll repeat it here. Of like when I remember in first year physio, I had when we had to do physics, and I was sitting in the physics classroom, and we were learning about. I can't exactly remember the topic, but the lecturer was the physics lecturer, who's he's not a physio, he's a physics guy, and he was talking about how little energy you burn when you exercise, and
Mm,
I think another really depressing thing is that the fitter you get, the more efficient you get, and the less you
yes.
burn,
Yep.
unless you go faster. But the this guy was saying, yeah, you hardly burn any energy when you exercise, relatively speaking. So if you need to lose weight, don't bother to exercise. And
Yeah,
there were a
well,
few of us there. I remember sitting next to a guy, and he and I were pretty fit for our age, and we were kind of like looking at each other, scratching our heads, and at the same time, so we were confused, and at the same time we were outraged. And I
yes.
think because there's something. that it just didn't pass the common sense test. But I couldn't have said why. But with this,
Yeah.
this is the reason I think.
Well, I think it is. I mean, yeah, value for money. If you're just
Mm.
thinking about exercise to burn calories, you wouldn't. It's probably not worth it.
Yeah.
But to be fit and healthy
Mm.
and to be metabolically flexible and all the other
Yeah.
benefits that come with it, absolutely
Yeah.
essential.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think that's and all the things I'm talking about now are the
Mm.
sort of things I try to educate my clients about,
Yeah.
so they feel more in control.
Mm.
And also, when I talk to them about how their physiology drives their hunger,
Mm.
it kind of explains why they've struggled for
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
years to lose weight because you try battling hunger.
Hmm.
No one can
Mm.
do it for very
Yeah.
long.
Not when there's food available.
No, no, not at
Yeah.
all. And I can't either. If I'm hungry
Mm.
and there's food
Mm.
there, man, I want to eat it.
Yep.
So it gives people a sense of control over what's going on
Yep.
and a sense of hope that if they can change their engine,
Mm. Yep.
that term, that they won't struggle so much.
Yeah. So what are the typical things you get people doing to make that the change to the engine?
From a nutrition standpoint, one of the key ones is a reduced carbohydrate diet.
Hmm.
Now, it's not a zero carb diet, and it's not
Hmm.
necessarily a ketogenic diet, although
Hmm.
that has its place in some health conditions.
Hmm.
But reducing carbs, and the first thing you get people to do is cut out all the processed stuff.
Yep.
You don't need to be Einstein to work out that is probably better for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then cut it for some people, they have to be stricter than others. So they have
Mm.
to cut out some of the starchy vegetables and some of the fruit. I mean, fruit's
Yep.
very sweet for a reason. It's got a lot of sugar in it.
Yep.
And we've been taught, and I was doing this, eat
Mm.
4 or 5 pieces of fruit a day if you're active. Well, that's a lot of carbs going into the
Mm.
system for people who might not need it.
Yep.
The number one strategy, reduce carbohydrates, and
Hmm.
the level depends on their physiology.
Yep.
Second one is don't eat too often.
Yep.
We were told we should all eat, every few hours.
Mm.
And I think that came about, one, probably by the food companies to try and sell more stuff,
Mm.
but also this fear that if people got hungry, they would just eat whatever was in front of them.
Right. Okay.
So there was this fear amongst professionals and dietitians, particularly, that we should never let anyone get hungry.
Mm.
Well, being hungry is a good thing.
Mm.
Physiologically, it's a good thing. So if you're not hungry, don't eat. So don't eat too often. As well as the low carb, I emphasize a high protein diet.
Hmm.
I think the research coming out now is showing that the estimates of how much protein people need are, we probably undersold
Mm.
that. People probably
Mm.
need more protein than we've told them.
Mm.
And certainly as people get older, they need to eat more protein.
Yeah. There's a couple of
Um,
things in there, I think, if you on the diet front, which are quite tricky because if I'm 45, you're 64.
yeah,
Probably the kind of standard diet changed a bit from when you were a kid to when I was,
yeah,
but not necessarily a huge amount. I was born in 79. But then
yep,
just to think like I've gone for some short amount of time trying to reduce carbohydrates a while ago. I don't really do it much because I do so much running,
yep,
but but it's actually quite hard to think of what to eat, because if your palate is and your sort of your data bank of recipes is
yeah.
is the kind of informed by 1980s Australia, it's all very carb centric. So
Yes, it
yeah,
is. It
yeah,
is. And therein lies why we've got 60% of the
yeah,
population, I
yeah.
think, why we've got 60%. I think it's finding substitutes.
Mm,
And I agree with you, cutting out rice and pasta and bread, which are kind of the big three
hmm.
ones, breakfast cereals. I'm not a fan of breakfast cereals at
Yeah,
all anymore because I
yeah,
think they're processed rubbish. But
yeah,
it's finding substitutes. So,
yeah,
cauliflower rice
yep,
instead of normal rice, and then put whatever you would have had.
yeah,
If you do pasta, do, zucchini noodles
yep,
or chop up cabbage and put your spaghetti sauce on it.
yep,
For someone like you can afford to eat more carbs because you are so active, but
yep.
those kind of substitutes work for people.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and
Um,
it's I think it sort of also points to the fact that you do need to do a bit of planning and kind of maybe a bit of education and kind of figuring out what it is you're going to do. But
yep.
then once you've done that, it's kind of done.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
And it's a very basic, I mean, it's a basic way of eating if I describe
Mm,
it. to my clients, I go, well, really, this is a meat and veg
Mm.
diet, meat for
Yeah.
your protein.
Yep.
And vegetarians can do it, but it is a lot
Yeah.
harder.
Yeah.
So it's meat for your protein, it's your veggies, and just
Mm.
avoid the really starchy veggies.
Yep.
If you need to cut carbs down low, and
Yeah.
that's what people would have been eating 100 years
Yeah.
ago.
And it's actually very tasty.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Eggs for breakfast.
Yep.
And yeah, the it can be a bit expensive if what you're used to is kind of, breakfast cereal sandwiches. It's a bit of a jump up. And again,
It's a
it's
little bit of a
yeah.
jump up, but my experience is people don't eat as
Mm.
much
Yeah,
in
okay.
quantity. So the cost, I don't think the cost
Yeah.
is as much as we think it is. It
Yeah.
doesn't jump as much as we think it
Yeah,
is.
and maybe the extra you pay in meat if you actually going just getting fresh fruit and veggie or fresh veggies, you are not spending on other things that yeah.
No, I mean, I go out to a local butcher here.
Mm.
One of my colleagues at work put me on to. And I go out and I'll buy a couple of lamb roasts and some
Mm.
steak and stuff. Well, I'll do a lamb roast on the barbecue.
Yeah.
For my wife and I, that'll be 3 meals if
Yeah.
so $25 for a lamb roast to do three
Yep.
meals for two people as the meat version. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
that
that's
much.
great. That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And then the other thing I think on the diet front can be yet figuring out how to eat a higher protein diet. That's the
yeah,
yeah, that's
that is
yeah, it is
yeah.
it's and yeah, like I've sort of tracked this occasionally and it's like, oh wow, I don't I don't I struggle to get 1.5 grams per kilogram of my body weight. And so from what you're saying is probably if you look at the recommendations, I don't know if you sort out the relevant peak body in Australia and you said
Yep.
what should a 45-year-old male like me be getting in terms of protein? I can't imagine they would be saying anything more than 1 gram per kilogram of body weight
No,
per day. But
point eight's kind of
yeah,
been the standard for a long
right.
time, but
Yeah.
I think we now know that probably not enough.
Yeah. So if you're having to get 1.5, say, grams per kilogram body weight per day,
Yep.
it's a big jump. I think,
It is
yeah.
yeah, I think that's
Mm,
one of the biggest challenges
mm,
for people, as particularly as people get older when they need
yep.
more protein.
Yep.
Older people, it looks like they probably need 2 grams per kilogram body
Mm,
weight. That's a lot of protein if they're not that hungry. So I agree
yeah.
that's a challenge. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Cool. Well, yeah, so you getting people to reduce carbohydrates,
Yes.
take more protein, and what about on the exercise front? So if you took and I'm particularly interested to know, do you encourage people to avoid kind of exercising hard and to get what's your approach to that?
Yeah, one of the measures I get is what's called mitochondrial efficiency. So it's
Hmm.
how efficiently they're using oxygen is a good way
Hmm.
to describe it. If people's system is not that efficient, what
Mm.
they need is that more aerobic type exercise
Yep.
at a lower intensity. So I've had a few clients, not many, but I've had a few clients who have
Mm.
been, doing F45, really high intensity stuff five
Yep.
days a week, but they're not very efficient. So I'll actually get them to slow down and do
Yep.
more aerobic type. So
Yeah.
most of my clients, end up at a combination of you need to be doing some aerobic stuff. I say just about every day, like,
Yeah. Okay.
minimum 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes
Yep.
of aerobic type exercise
Mm.
most days of the week.
Yeah. So you
On
could,
top,
sorry, you go.
yep, go on.
Oh, so you're saying you could have a scenario where someone is exercising a lot, still struggling to lose weight,
Yep,
and they're because they can't, they're not, their body isn't very good for whatever reason, at accessing their fat.
yep.
Yeah. So that I imagine would be a very frustrating situation to be in.
Very frustrating because,
Mm,
literally have had a few who are like, I'm at F45 every day of the week and
mm,
I'm hammering myself.
mm,
I can't seem to lose weight. And the problem is when you're hammering yourself in a high intensity stuff, you will
mm.
be burning glucose because
Yeah.
our body needs that quick energy hit.
Mm,
So
yep.
preferentially go to using glucose, which is
Yeah.
exactly what we're designed to do.
Yeah.
But that's not great for somebody who's trying to lose weight because if they're
Yeah.
not fat,
And it's kind of you're reinforcing the pathways
yes,
that are there
exactly,
already. Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you use this technology for endurance athletes? Because the reason I ask is one, people talk a lot these days about kind of, zone two training, a long, slow distance. It's not necessarily slow, but
Yep.
the training that's has the intention of helping you to develop your aerobic system, which
Yes.
with using fat as fuel. And so someone like me, like I think if I went and came to your lab, I'm not sure I would be terribly efficient. So do you have many kind of endurance athletes coming in?
I've certainly had some. I've had some
Mm.
professional athletes come
Yeah.
and see me. Not necessarily professional endurance athletes,
Mm.
but athletes who are playing team sports, they need a
Mm.
good endurance base.
Mm.
So it is helpful. We know, or what the research is showing is that what people burn at rest
Mm.
is typically what influences what they'll burn when they're exercising. So
Right.
if you're not a good fat burner at rest, you're not going to be a good
Mm.
fat burner when you're exercising.
Mm.
Certainly get some, people who are athletes, maybe not elite athletes. So
Mm.
cyclists, for example.
Mm.
And I'm an example, 15, 20 years ago, I would have to take the gels and the bananas and stuff to get through a 3-hour bike ride
Mm-hmm.
because I'd run out of available energy. I'd run out of glucose.
Yep.
Well, through, the changes and the journey I've been on, changing my diet, changing predominantly, I can go out and exercise and ride my bike for 3 hours and not need to fuel up because
Yeah.
I've burned fat that I've got stored. That's
Yep.
where athletes want to get to, really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. And yeah, I think particularly the longer the event, the more it matters. Yeah.
Yeah, especially,
Yeah.
people who are swimming to Rottnest, for example, if you
Hmm.
can do that without having to stop and have a sandwich, 4 times
Yeah.
on the way over,
Yeah.
that's a pretty good result, really.
Yeah.
And you should be able to, physiologically, you should be able
Mm.
to.
Yeah. So tell me, when you hear when you hear people talk about weight loss and they use the kind of calories in, calories out framework,
Yes.
what goes through your head?
Um, I think the first thing that comes from my head is how ineffective that is. I mean, energy matters. There's no doubt
Mm.
that energy
Hmm.
matters. But when people try, and I never tell my clients to count calories because listen, what's on the packet? Well, one,
Mm.
if it's in a packet, you probably shouldn't be eating it. But, if you go, well, this banana's got so many, we don't know. We
Hmm.
don't know how many calories we can guess. And then
Mm.
we don't know of those calories in that food,
Mm.
how much does the body absorb? Because some of it goes straight through. So
Hmm.
we don't know how many calories are going in, and we don't know how many are going out.
Mm.
So if someone's really efficient, they might not be burning as many calories. They might be really healthy, but they
Yeah.
might not be burning as many. So it's all very guesswork.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's very helpful.
Mm.
Certainly, no one wants to spend their life counting calories.
Yeah. It's a lot of work as well. Even if it was
Yeah,
accurate, it's a lot. It's
even
a
if it
lot of
was
data
accurate,
entry.
but
Yeah.
it's not.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is not to say that the process of counting calories is always um, inadvisable for everyone. It's just
No,
that the
some
the
people it's
actual
helpful.
process, yeah, can actually can because if you're paying attention to it, your behavior will change. So it can be very
Well,
good for
that's
some
right.
people.
And
Yeah.
and I get people to be aware of the carbohydrates that's
Mm.
there
Hmm.
and be somewhat aware of how much protein they're getting,
Yep.
but not counting the calories. Some
Yeah.
people love doing that, and if
Mm.
they do, go for
Yeah.
it. And some people love to write down everything they've eaten.
Mm.
And if they do, I say do that. But if it's
Yep.
going to drive you crazy, don't do it. Last thing I want people to do is be totally focused on everything they're putting in their mouth because
Yeah.
that's a recipe for heading them towards eating disorders. Maybe
Hmm.
I don't want
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of worth like slowing down again to kind of draw out some of the things you said. The first of all, what you said about how if you take a given food, like you were saying, the banana,
Yep.
we don't a person there's multiple ways errors can creep in. So
Yes.
and please feel free to comment on anything I say, but when you take that banana you don't necessarily know. I mean, you've got to weigh it, but then also got to weigh the peel and
Yeah.
not the
Exactly.
banana. Yeah, so
Yep.
that's a source of error. And then different people will take more will because of their unique physiology, their unique digestive system.
Yep.
Some will extract more energy than others.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
then,
I don't know exactly how much
mm,
variation there is, but there
mm,
has to be. We're
yeah.
not all exactly the same.
Yeah. And
And
then
even foods with labels that says it's
mm,
got this many calories, from what I
mm,
understand, they only have to be within about 20% of what the
yeah,
thing
right.
to be acceptable for the standards authorities. So you don't
Mm,
ever really know what you're getting.
yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And then and different foods, depending on the fiber content, my understanding is that your body, so there's different people will absorb different amounts of energy from a food. And then
Yes.
from food to food, it also varies as
Yes.
to how much energy you extract from a food. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So, we're kind of trying to measure something with a tape measure with no numbers on it. I mean, I just made that up, but it's kind
Yeah.
of a good
Yeah.
analogy in some ways, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
I think, yeah, probably also my opinion is that also kind of the calories in, calories out thing also, it's not wrong, but it obscures the a very important thing, which is hunger, and the
Yes.
fact that different types of foods have a different ability to affect your level of satiation, your satisfaction with how
Yes.
with what you've eaten.
Absolutely. And the big thing to remember too is different foods create a different physiological response. So somebody
Mm,
could eat, let's say we know exactly, somebody could eat 500 calories of protein
mm,
or 500 calories of carbohydrate, and the physiological response in the body is enormously different.
hmm.
So to just be focused on calories and
Yeah,
not be conscious of what's that food impact of that food on our physiological
yeah,
response is it's short-sighted. It doesn't make
yeah.
sense.
It's been interesting to kind of observe the kind of carbs, no carbs versus moderate carbs war.
Yes.
And then one of the things the no or low carb, ketogenic proponents will say is that eating lots of carbohydrates influences you to move less. And
Yeah.
therefore that affects how much. So it's not that the carbohydrates are necessarily stored as fat more readily. It's that they possibly make you, less energetic,
Yes.
and therefore you don't need as much food. Or
Yeah,
you don't
and
burn
the
as much energy.
physiology of that makes sense because when we
Mm,
eat carbohydrates break down into glucose, we get an insulin response.
mm,
Insulin's job is to store energy away and to
hmm.
protect our energy stores. So one of the things insulin does is it makes us more lethargic so we don't
Right.
burn up energy. So
Mm,
and when you explain that to people, they go, "Oh, that's why I get
mm,
tired after I've had, sandwiches for lunch."
yeah.
So
That's quite counterintuitive, isn't it? Because you think the carbohydrates are the most readily accessible form of energy that your
yes.
body has access to, but is it also the fact that it makes you less energetic?
Yeah, but I mean, if you think back evolutionary, right, and I use the analogy of a bear, I mean,
Mm,
bears in summer will eat anything sweet
mm,
to put on as much fat as possible.
yeah,
And the typical, Yogi Bear looking for honey kind of
yeah.
cartoons that might be before before you were born. I don't know. We think of bears looking for honey,
Yep.
and it makes them want more, so they put on fat to last for winter. Well, our physiology is the same. When we
Mm,
eat carbohydrates, the message the body gets is we need to store any excess away as fat for
yep.
winter. Just in our world and our lifestyle now, with food access so often, there is no
Mm,
winter
yeah.
as far as food shortages go. So
Yep.
we're constantly in this energy storage mode and
Mm,
we never get into the energy burning mode.
yeah. Yeah. It's all the impression I get is that, this is all it's a complex system, and there are
Hugely.
all sorts of little there are all sorts of important factors, and all those factors are interdependent on each other.
Yeah, and not everybody's the same.
Mm,
I mean, yeah, we've all basically got the same physiology, but where they're at in their metabolic health,
yeah.
they're all a bit different. So the challenge for a practitioner is to help the person work out what's the best strategies for them.
Yeah.
And
Have
for
you
some,
worked?
that Yeah, go on.
Have you worked with many people who've been able to achieve like a long-term significant weight loss without structured exercise?
Um, I've certainly worked with some who have been able to maintain long-term weight loss without being dependent on the
Hmm.
exercise.
Yep.
But I never encourage that because
Mm,
there's so many other benefits to exercise, and
mm,
exercise certainly helps for their engine to work as well as possible.
yep.
So I can't think of many of my clients who aren't doing anything, but there are
Yeah.
certainly some who aren't doing a lot. It might be
Yeah.
a walk for half an hour a day,
Mm,
which, in the scheme of things is not a lot of exercise.
mm,
Um, so it is possible.
mm.
And I tell people if you have to use exercise to control your body fat levels and your weight, then there's something wrong with your diet.
Right.
It,
Mm.
exercise isn't about it's about making your system work all that much better, not about burning up energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. The reason I ask is because my understanding of this area is that um, what while exercise doesn't necessarily, like we're saying, doesn't its effect has perhaps been overstated in relation to the diet in the past. But
yes,
then when they look at the long term, um, when they do like longitudinal studies, they find that one of the things that seems to predict long term weight loss is if someone is regularly exercising.
yeah, and I think that's about keeping their physiology, if you like, if
Mm,
you want to use that word, working as effectively as
mm,
possible.
yep.
And also, I think it's a bit countering the effects of getting older.
Mm,
Our physiology, our whole system doesn't work as well as we get older, unfortunately. So
yeah.
exercise helps to prevent that kind of decline that would happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've just got one more question to ask you about an unrelated topic, but I think, yeah, I, it's a very interesting area, and I think I might come and see you
Okay.
to get myself looked at. But I
Yeah.
think, yeah, people listening to this could really, want to commend your services to them because, I think it can really be powerful information to get, and that, and then the information itself will be powerful, but then you're also working with someone to coach you through the process.
Yeah.
And that can be, and I think even it's kind of like anything, like if you get someone to help you who's a kind of expert in their field, who's an honest person that has experience and a track record, they're going to also, you're also kind of committing to yourself that you're going to devote your time and energy to it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that kind of you basically saying, okay, I'm getting serious now. And there's
Yes.
someone else involved, not just me inside my own head.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think the point you made too, like the metabolic testing, it's not the answer, it's a
Mm.
tool. So
Yep.
it helps me help the person to
Mm.
understand their physiology better. So we come up with strategies that are going to work for them.
Mm.
And sometimes, we have to tweak it and and as they change, we change things.
Yeah.
And the beauty too is we can test their metabolic profile on
Yep.
a regular basis to see if some of the changes they're making are starting to have an impact before they
Yeah.
lose weight. Because a
Yeah.
lot of people give up weight loss
Yeah.
program
Yeah.
when it might actually be starting to work, but it just hasn't shown up on the
Mm.
scales yet.
Yep.
And so this gives us a chance to measure what's
Mm.
going on for them
Yep.
potentially before they start to see differences on
Yeah.
the scale.
Yeah. I think that's so important, like, because it can
Yeah,
be so, if you have to lose a lot of weight, it can be so discouraging to just be staring into the void of the time all it's going to take, and then feeling
yeah,
like it's not working. And
yeah. And I've
this
done
if
all
this
this work and I've only lost half a kilo, and I
yeah.
go, hang on, your physiology looks better this week
Yep.
than it did last week. Let's just keep going. So there is certainly a sense of using again the tool to keep
Mm.
people motivated long enough to get
Yep.
long-term results.
Yep.
Because for some people, it takes quite a while before they'll start to see weight loss changes.
Yeah.
They could be metabolically healthier before, or often they're metabolically healthy before that. So it's a useful tool from that point of view.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. So last question. So you've written a book about your observations based on people observing people in aged care. So
Yes.
what was that called? And tell us a bit about that
Yeah,
book.
my little book, it kind of grew out of coming home from work and saying to my wife, "Oh, do you know what I realized today? You know, I was in my 30s working with people who are 80, 90, and 100. I
Mm,
started to write all these little tips and ideas down, and
mm.
then someone said put it into a book, and I did and ran it by a few people. They said, "Oh yeah, this is." So the book is called "If I'd Only Known I'd Live This Long," and it's kind of all the things people need to know before they get old.
Yeah.
And when I talk to people, I go, "Well, what's old?" And it's usually 10 years older than where they are now. So if I asked you, you'd probably go, "Well, 55, that's old."
55.
And I go, "Well, 75, that's old." So it's usually 10 years. So it's kind of relates to any age.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky to get a lady to help me illustrate it. So it's a fun little coffee table book
Yeah.
that people enjoy. Yeah.
What are the top five things?
Oh gosh. Well, there's about 70 little tips and things in
Yeah.
there. And it's not just about exercise and health,
Yeah.
like there's stuff about money and about relationships and about where you live. And so there's a whole heap of things.
Mm.
I mean, attitude's a big one. People
Hmm.
focusing on as you get older, you realize things don't work as well as they used to. So you kind of got to focus on the things you can still do, not the things
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
used to be able to do when you were 20 years younger.
Mm.
That's a big factor in how people accept getting older.
Right.
So I
Mm.
tell people you've got to accept that you're going to get older, but you kind of got to fight it as well in the fact
Mm.
you've got to keep doing all the things you want to be able to do,
Mm.
especially on the days you don't feel like doing it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Cool. So your clinic is the HFRC, so that you work for HFRC, and
Yes.
they
Yeah.
are in what suburb?
We're on Stirling Highway, Netherlands.
Cool.
So Netherlands, WA. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
David's your man to help you with your metabolic health. And yeah, it's been really fun chatting to you, and appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thanks, Tim. I
Yeah.
mean, I enjoy it.
Anything.
You can tell I'm kind of passionate about it. So
That's
yeah,
right.
if I can help people, I love doing that.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I'm going to stop now. Okay.